In a franchise with as many entries as Sonic, you're bound to have some iconic fan-favorite levels. Levels that transcend their game's status and go from not just the best or most iconic level in their respective games, but one of the best levels in the entire franchise. I'm talking about stages like Green Hill, Emerald Coast, City Escape, and plenty of others. These levels are often regarded in such high praise that when the topic of actual levels in the franchise are brought up, these will be some of the first you ever hear. Now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you have levels that are widely considered to be awful and downright notorious. It's usually brought up when a certain game is mentioned, like, yeah, this game might be great, but that one level in it fucking sucks. However, today, I, the contrarian I am here to discuss some widely hated levels I actually find to be pretty good. Now, just because I include a certain level in this list usually doesn't mean I find it to be the cream of the crop or S tier necessarily. It just means it's a level I like a good bit and find to be a bit overhated for whatever reason. But also, I'm only including levels I genuinely like. Labyrinth Zone is widely hated, but I don't like that zone, so I won't be including it. Got it? I feel the first place to naturally look is Sonic 1. This game's a bit of a mixed bag for many people, and I always hear the same general thoughts on it. Half of the levels are pretty good, and half of the others are pretty bad. I'd actually like to defend some of those bad levels, as I love them quite a lot. Starting off with Marble Zone, I feel this stage is a very easy contender for a lot of hate. Coming off the heels of the fast-paced physics playground that is Green Hill, you're suddenly thrusted into this way slower slog of a stage with several stop-and-go elements that kill all momentum Green Hill had. That is Marble Zone on paper. However, I feel as though the stage is very misunderstood, and a lot of people believe that description is 100% accurate and don't bother giving it a proper shot. Marble Zone is undoubtedly a slower level than Green Hill, but that doesn't automatically make it worse. Marble Zone consists of more methodical platforming throughout its runtime and a challenge that heavily contrasts with Green Hill's difficulty. Is this weird when it comes to the game's pacing? You could argue that for sure, but Sonic games are meant to be replayed, which if anything makes these harder stages better for replayability. Marble Zone has a ton of traps, obstacles, you name it. You won't be going Green Hill fast the majority of the time here. Your speed is going to need to be earned. A lot of people get really upset with the slower pace of the stage because they equate not being able to go fast a lot of the time to bad design, when in reality that's not true. The flow state of Sonic 1 as a whole is more akin to Mario, and Marble encapsulates that perfectly. Intense, precise platforming that can be sped through at a decent pace with mastery of the stage. This stage has to be one of the highest skill ceilings out of any Sonic level, as to truly master it, you need to truly master it. But even when you're only a little above average, this stage is a blast. A lot of the stop and go elements aren't actually as stop and go as you think. Most of the times you can just skip the wait with some good platforming. Now there are some points where you are pretty much just forced to stop, and I do dislike that. But for the most part, Marble Zone is honestly an incredibly solid stage that ends up turning people off from it due to its different styles of flow state and its difficulty. I love Marble Zone. If you enjoyed the video so far, you get the gist. Subscribe, and if you want to support me even more, join my Patreon for as low as $2.50 a month. Link in the description. Let's get back to it. While we're on the topic of Sonic 1, I also want to point out Scrap Brain. I don't have as much to say about this one, and I don't like it nearly as much as Marble Zone, but pretty much everything I said about Marble applies here. It's a pretty hard level with tons of traps and obstacles, yet this only makes it more fun and rewarding to speedrun. Some of its tricks can be a little annoying, but for the most part, it's easy to get a good run going of this zone after like the third playthrough of it. I think it's also a very solid zone. Now, what would a Zack the Insomniac video be without some mention of Sonic CD? Obviously, you know which zone I'm talking about. Wacky Workbench. Wacky Workbench on the surface is this chaotic and incoherent mess of floating platforms and bouncy floors meant to mess you up and send you off path. For a while, I felt pretty much the same way towards this stage. I found it pretty annoying for the same reasons many others did. But then I applied the same mindset I applied to the rest of the game, which is don't brute force it. These floating platforms aren't just here for show. People get annoyed when they end up bouncing up to the top, all while avoiding the one thing keeping you from touching said floor. I'm not saying that you can avoid the floor 100% of the time. Getting bounced up is an inevitability. However, you can avoid like 90% or more of this by just simply platforming your way across, instead of brute forcing the stage and getting upset when you avoid the one thing that's clearly trying to help you. The only reason people disregard these platforms is because the game doesn't punish them with death. Since they aren't killed for doing this, they assume this is completely as intended, even when it's pretty obviously not. Wacky Workbench is still one of my least favorite stages in the game. The bar is very high though, so that doesn't really mean much. But recently, more than ever, I've discovered its true potential and have had it really grown on me. Now we make our jump to 3D with Sonic Adventure, and for the most part, all these stages are well liked, except for one. Lost World. Lost World is the penultimate stage of the game, and one I find to be really overhated. Now, it is extremely easy to see why the stage is hated the way it is, the snake. A portion of the level takes place in this room with a wooden snake constantly swimming around in a circular motion. There's 3 buttons you need to press that unlock the door to get out of the room, and multiple other buttons that rise the water level so you can get higher and higher and eventually reach the top where the exit resides. Now that on its own already doesn't sound super exciting, but the nail in the coffin comes from the snake itself. The collision of this thing is extremely jank and is easily what people hate the most. You aren't really able to stand still on it without twitching and being moved a little bit. You seemingly can't spin dash as it kills your speed. These guards only sometimes work, and sometimes you can just straight up fall through the snake entirely. It's jank and there's no denying it. However, I feel as though people over-exaggerate how bad this section truly is. The button pressing doesn't include a lot of stop and go elements despite what you might think. You're constantly moving from button to button and platforming in the process. The only time you're pretty much forced to wait for a bit is on the way to the door at the top. As every other time you need to seemingly ride the snake, there's usually a way to speed up the process or do some easy skips to remove that extra waiting time. Very little time here is spent actually waiting, and the jank, while noticeable, isn't as big of a problem as people say it is. I think a lot of people panic when on it, and it often leads to a preventable death. In reality, just line yourself up in the middle if you get pushed too far off, and be a bit more careful than usual. So while I don't love this section, I certainly don't think it's bad either, and it doesn't last very long if you actually try. Unfortunately, this stage in many people's minds boils down to the snake when they completely disregard the rest of the stage, which I think is amazing. This light puzzle is actually very solid because, well, you don't need to participate in it. You can just ignore every mirror and do some spin dash jumps across the section quickly, and it's very fun. There's also this section where you have to push this button to align panels on the wall that enable you to stand and run on them. This section can also be made short work of with some thoughtful platforming and spin dash jumps, and again, it's really fun. Overall, a very fun stage and one of the better stages than SA1 in my opinion, as it isn't so handholdy. Now this next stage is one I debated putting on my list entirely, as I'm not sure if it truly qualifies as a widely hated Sonic stage. It's a stage from Sonic Lost World, and while it's one that definitely isn't notoriously hated, I feel like the general consensus on this game's levels as a whole is bad. So I'm talking about a level that may not be widely hated, but I've never really seen it talked about positively, so whatever. I'll make this quick. Skyroad Act 2 is the stage I'm referring to. This stage is pretty much fully 2D until the end, where you have a short boss with Zavik, and while that sounds pretty bad on paper, it's actually more of a blessing in disguise, as I feel the 2D levels end up being way better as their potential for speedrunning is way higher than the 3D levels. All this level is a good minute and a half of nothing but uninterrupted, solid platforming. There's not much to say about it. It's extremely fun to speedrun, and the platforming in it, while not groundbreaking, is really good. This is probably one of, if not my favorite stages in the entire game due to how well the pacing is. A lot of Lost World's better levels often have the problem of having these really well designed sections separated by ones that are an absolute slog. Skyroad Act 2 doesn't really have this. Now, it does have a boss at the end, which usually would seal its fate, but luckily it's probably the best boss in the game. Not because it's actually good, rather because you can beat this boss in no time, so the pace of the level is never really dragged down or broken. Because of this, I thought I'd mention this stage because it's one that never really gets much attention, and I'm not sure when I'd ever get the chance to bring it up again. Now, the last stage I like to talk about is Planet Wisp Act 2 from Sonic Generations. Often regarded as a stay-in on an otherwise perfect set of levels, I'm actually quite fond of this stage. The thing people hate about this stage, obviously, is that partway through the stage, you're sent into this 2D section that lasts pretty much the remainder of the stage, and it's the longest stage in the game at that. Many people find it slow and boring, and while I used to agree with this, I simply don't anymore because, to put it simply, I got better at it. Most people get to the stage, groan, and then don't try playing it how it wants to be played, like a platformer, and end up trying to boost 24/7 while running into every obstacle. This stage needs to be played a bit more methodically, and people simply don't. Many of the people complaining about the stage are rarely seen playing on the top paths of the stage, and I feel like that says a lot. You haven't even put the effort into the stage to get the most out of it. It also doesn't help that a large number of Sonic fans are simply allergic to platforming and groan whenever they're asked to. The Rocket Wisp is also largely pointed to as being a pace breaker, and while I almost agree, I can't because it barely takes up any time at all. Also, here's a small tip. You don't actually have to hold the button down. From my experience, you can simply press it and go up about the same time, if not a little quicker. The level design as a whole isn't mind-blowing, but it's nowhere near being bad like most people claim it is. And yes, obviously I like the section that comes beforehand better. It's incredibly well designed, and I would obviously like more of it. However, riding off the stage entirely because you put in zero effort into it is kinda silly. Also, not to mention that the stage isn't actually super long or anything. Yes, it's still the longest in the game, but like, it's only 4 minutes and 30 seconds if you play well. That is not very long, I'm sorry. Then again, most people probably aren't getting that time. They're getting somewhere near 7 minutes because, like I said prior, zero effort has been put in on improving their skill of the level. Now, if you want to hear me talk more about this level in particular, particular, I actually made a video specifically on it not too long ago, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on it in more detail. Well, that about wraps it up. What do you think of the levels I mentioned? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to fucking gut me? What are some levels that are widely hated that you like? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support me directly, you can do so on Patreon for as low as $2.50 a month. Link in the description. I'll see you next time. Peace.